They did update the page, the store page for Ghost of Yotei. They did reaffirm the 2025 release date first and foremost, so they are still saying that it's coming out this year. They mentioned a couple of other things, like Atsu seeking to get revenge for the death of her family after her homestead is destroyed. New weapon types, dual katana, zodachi, kasurigama. Set in 1603, 300 years after Ghost of Tsushima. Massive sightlines with sprawling grasslands and icy tundras. Vegetation sways believably in the wind. New mechanics and gameplay improvements. The land surrounding Mount Yotei is outside the rule of Japan, a wild frontier filled with unexpected dangers. I'm down for that. Sounds like dynamic boss fights to me. And it just generally looks really good. Now, one of these things is obviously like the elephant in the room. When does it launch? When is it coming out? Good question. Glad you asked. Tomorrow. No, I think the big thing is nobody wants to be close to GTA 6, right? Everybody knows that. Everybody knows you don't want to be close to GTA 6, and GTA 6 is looking more and more likely like it's actually locking in for probably October. So they are faced with a choice. They can release in November, which potentially puts them next to Call of Duty and GTA Online, which will dominate the internet. And if they go any later than like mid-November, they don't get access to Game Award nominations. And I think Sony really values that. So I think it's unlikely that we get like an early December release for this. I'd be very surprised if they did that, just because I think they want that Game of the Year nomination. So then you go back the other way. You don't want to be in October because GTA 6 is probably October. So then you're looking at September. Well, September, there's a couple of holes in the schedule, but some people are thinking that, you know, we might see something like a marathon release in September. But I think September is possible. But then you start to look at, well, what about August? Well, we're starting to move up very, very close. And there is an insider who's gotten some stuff right, doesn't have like a perfect track record or anything, but has gotten some stuff right. Detective Seeds. So take this with a massive grain of salt. Two people are giving info allegedly suggesting that one insider said mid to late August. That person has missed a bit. The other one has been more accurate, said late July, and has been spot on. So he's guessing mid to late July, maybe even slipping into August for a release. And pointing to supporting evidence of this was, just so you know, Ghost of Tsushima did store and web updates in March of 2020, and the game released in July of 2020. So they've done the tight turnaround before. If this ends up launching in July, I'll be surprised. Number one, July is like a dead month for gaming. It just is. Like historically, most games skip July and go straight to August. And there's a number of reasons for it. One of the things is that like games media, they all kind of go on vacation in that July period because most games don't come out. And most games don't come out in part because of that. So coverage is going to be harder to get. The other thing is a lot of people are outside touching literal grass. You know, a lot of gamers are outside and are doing more active things. And so they're less likely to stay closed up inside, you know, playing games. And it's, you know, maybe it's an artifact of a bygone era. Just like how most games launch on Tuesdays and Fridays, they launch on Tuesdays a lot of the time because of old distribution, like trucking routes where games would be shipped on Monday mornings and physical copies would show up to stores on the trucks Monday night for release on Tuesday morning. And nowadays, of course, with digital copies and with, you know, year-round shipping and stuff, it doesn't really matter, but that's how it used to be. And so the tradition is just kind of carried forth. So it's not necessarily a given that it just because a game releases in July, it'll do badly. That's not a given. It's just abnormal. It's not typical. But the one thing is, if they release in July, they will basically have the month to themselves, which is probably exactly what you want in a year that is otherwise very, very crowded. Even in August, for example, it's expected that they're going to have a massive push, Take-Two is, with probably a release of Mafia, would be my guess, in like August. And then they're going to ramp up marketing for Borderlands. So already in August, like you're going to start to really compete for attention from YouTubers, streamers, game journalists, outlets, all these things that you kind of have to factor in and remember. But if you release in July, you're kind of all on your own. You just get to do your own thing. Doesn't that affect Death Stranding? Well, Death Stranding's in June, and June is sort of a weird period because one of the other things that typically happens in the past, you had E3, and E3 worldwide was attended and watched, and publishers from all over the world came. And after E3 happened, big things were shown off, and then everybody kind of chilled out. All of the announcements for the whole 3-month period from like May to July had been covered in that event. So there was nothing else to really talk about, and people just would go on vacation or whatever, kind of chill out. Releasing your game in July or in June, I think does work, because you can do a big preview, you can do a big marketing push in the summer. Like now it's Summer Games Fest, but prior it would have been E3, of course. But you can do a preview, you can let press try the game at Summer Games Fest. They promote the game a week and a half, 2 weeks before launch. You send out review codes 2 weeks before launch. You're good. But July has just historically stayed very, very empty. So it would be surprising to see it released there, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. It also, I think, would guarantee that they are nowhere near GTA 6, which I think is the bigger thing. They just don't want to be anywhere close to that. And I think if they start pushing to like September, October, they're playing a dangerous game. So if I had to put money on it, I would still guess August. I think maybe mid-August is like a more reasonable guess. I think that would be more likely. But if it launches in July, that could also make a lot of sense, because they would have a total month basically to themselves. Baldur's Gate was August. Yeah. Even Starfield was early access in August, and then it launched officially like day one in early September. But that's part of it. Ghost 1 was released in July too. Yeah. Well, and that's, like he says here, it released in July. The weird thing with that is that it was 2020. So it was in the middle of COVID lockdowns and stuff. So 2020 was also just a total, like, it was a very weird time. So you could release in July because everybody was kind of still stuck at home. It still wasn't really a thing where you could go out. People were even weird. I don't know what it was like where you live, but people were weird where I live, even going to like parks and stuff. People didn't want to go outside even because there were other people there. So 2020 was just a bizarre time, but it at the very least showed that they are comfortable doing summer marketing nonetheless. Yeah, but to be fair, GTA 6 makes everything weird this year too, Luke. Yeah, no, exactly. That's why like any of the rules that would typically apply to GTA 6 or to games around GTA 6 are kind of broken now. It's very different. Very, very different. But all of this to say, I'm excited. This year really will go down as probably one of the most intensely like mad and highly contested game of the year competitions of recent memory. Because I think it's likely that like Ghost gets a nomination. Doom could absolutely get nominated. I think, GTA 6, of course. Mafia, the trailer we got looks really good. I hope Mafia is really good. KCD 2, Monster Hunter, Split Fiction. Like it's almost hard to find a game that's not amazing. It's really, really crazy. But it's a good year to be a gamer, I'll tell you what. And there's still allegedly some big announcements and surprises. If you missed my video on God of War, there's a very good reason to believe we might have a surprise announcement of a God of War spin-off game, like a sort of prequel set in Greece with Kratos. That's very possible by the end of this year. There's some very reliable people who are saying that, which would be very surprising. God of War in Egypt would still be a few years away. God of War in Egypt, I think, is farther off, but this smaller spin-off game, like a Miles Morales size game, is allegedly coming this year. Even Marathon, I think Marathon is expected to be this year too, I think. The Black Flag remake, yeah, all that stuff. So it's just, there's so much. But this is kind of what, was it 2023 was kind of like this? We were like, there's so much. What are we even going to do? And this year's just insane, so. We'll see. We'll see if we get Ghost of Yotei in just a matter of months. It's possible. He took my thing.